Hello, and welcome to the Stories I Carry, a podcast where life meets story and story meets soul. I'm Donna, writer, teacher, and believer in the healing power of stories and storytelling. Each week, I'll share a personal narrative, some poignant, some funny, but all true. And I will invite you to sit with me in the moment. If this is your first time connecting with any of my videos or my live streams, thank you for tuning in. If you've been walking this journey with me for a while, welcome back, friend. Today's story is called Juneteenth Memories. It's about Juneteenth, barbecue, and red Kool Aid. And then I moved to California. Let me take you back a bit. Little backstory. I wasn't born by the river in a little tent, but I was born and raised in Texas. I was born in San Antonio, Texas, because my father was in the military, the Air Force. He was stationed at Lackland Air Force Base. Originally from Louisiana, he joined the military, as many Black boys did if they were raised in the South. Did I say he was raised in Louisiana? No, he was raised in Mississippi, Indianola, Mississippi. Sunflower County, Mississippi, an ironic name for a county that had, or perhaps still has, the reputation of being the most violent county in Mississippi. But he escaped through the military. My mother was raised in Texas, a little country town in southeast Texas. But after she graduated from high school at 16, and I don't know how old she was when she moved to the big city of San Antonio, but she moved there to attend beauty school. And I never knew to ask the question back then, was it a Madam C.J. Walker beauty school? And of course it had to be, because after all, where would a Black woman go to learn how to do black hair in the Jim Crow South but to a Madam C.J. Walker beauty school? So that's where my mother and my father met, in San Antonio, Texas. I don't remember much about San Antonio. I think we moved away when I was in the second grade. I do remember the school, St. Peter Claver School. I later researched it because I didn't know about the history of St. Peter Claver. And I later researched it and discovered it had been founded by a woman who was not a nun, but was Catholic, and founded St. Peter Claver in order that marginalized children might have a good education. St. Peter Claver, it's no longer in existence as a school, but I think it's still in existence as a nonprofit. But anyway, that's where I was born, in Texas. And every year that I can remember back, we celebrated the 19th of June. We called it Juneteenth. At the time, I knew nothing of the history of Juneteenth. I did not know the backstory. I just knew every 19th of June, it was about barbecue and red Kool Aid. Yeah, that was the flavor, red Kool Aid. And every year, someone would either have a barbecue in their backyard, or we would go across this bridge over this man-made lake to this little piece of land that was sandy and rocky that we called the beach. But it was just set aside for us Black people. Wasn't a lot of land, but I can remember the laughter and the fun and the food in those moments. Juneteenth. What I didn't know back then, and I said it earlier, I didn't know my history. I didn't know my ancestry. I did not know my culture. I didn't know what I needed to know. Just a black girl growing up in the Jim Crow South, used to all the things that were required and expected of us. Years and years later, I looked up the 1940 census as I began to do a search, a genealogy search. And in the 1940 census, my grandfather is noted as a farmer. He was not a farmer. Every morning, weekday morning, he would rise, he would get up, and he would grab his lunch in a Brer Rabbit syrup pail. And I know you know nothing about a Brer Rabbit syrup pail. My grandmother would prepare his lunch and put it in that pail, and he would grab it by the handle and walk up the dirt road from our house to the asphalt paved road in front of the house to catch the truck to the cotton field. My grandfather was so smart. He was a smart man, but was never afforded the education or the opportunities. But our faith roots are AME. What do you know about the AME church? Well, if you know anything, you know that back in the day in Philadelphia, the good Methodists decided that the Black people could no longer sit on the main floor, that they had to sit in the balcony. And Richard Allen said, oh, no, not today. We can start our own thing. And the African Methodist Episcopal Church came into being. And my family's roots were AME. White's Chapel AME, named after my grandmother's family. Little white clapboard church set in the middle of a pasture with a cemetery on the side. And from my grandparents' backyard, I could look through the trees and see that church just sitting there. White's Chapel AME. The pastor was itinerant, which means that from time to time, they would show up, maybe twice a month. And when the pastor was not there, my grandfather would oversee the service. Now, I don't remember anything about the services because I was a little kid. Who cared about what was going on? But during those moments, I would see my Uncle Bud sitting over there in the corner, playing the guitar. Well, actually, not playing it, but plunking it. And the one song I remember him plunking out on the guitar was, do Lord, do remember me. Oh, do Lord, remember me. Now, my Uncle Bud was a character. And I think he irritated my grandfather. My grandfather thought he was lazy. He was the only boy in a family of girls. He was the baby boy. And I'm trying to think how many girls. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe 4 girls. Maybe 4. My grandmother and 3 aunts. 2 of whom I knew, 1 I never met. But Uncle Bud, I don't ever remember him working. But he had a watermelon patch. And he kept us, what, filled with watermelon. He would bring over watermelons and they'd sit on the front porch, the garret, they called it. And there would be orange meat watermelons and red meat watermelons. My grandmother would cut it in half. Then she would cut the half in half and she'd hand a slice to me, hand a slice to my sister. And in the summertime, in the Texas heat, we'd sit on the front porch and eat the watermelons down to the rind, juice dribbling down our arms. We did not care. So as far as I know, that's what Uncle Bud did for a living. He raised watermelons. I don't know what he did in the winter. Just a black girl growing up in the Jim Crow South. My grandfather was smart. My grandmother, just a practical woman, big boned woman. And on that 1940 census, she's noted as a washerwoman, and she was. Every summer, my mother would send us to our grandparents. Didn't dawn on me until years later, she got a free summer every summer. And we lived with them for 3 years. And whenever my grandmother would go up to Ms. Willie's to wash, she would take me with her. And I would sit and watch her as she boiled water, this big black cast iron pot in the backyard of Miss Willie's, and put the whites in there and the bluing in there and the lye soap in there, and take this board, this plank, and stir it under that fire. And then at some point when it deemed it was clean enough, lift it up and then put it into this. It looked like a washing machine, but I don't think it was a washing machine. Put the whites in there and rinse them and then run them through the wringer and hang them on the clothesline. Hard work for Miss Willie in this big, expansive White House, out of which a green lawn flowed down to this little house. I can still see a little brown asphalt shingled house where the caretaker and his wife lived. I don't know what he took care of, Mr. Justice. And Miss Lizzie, I presume Miss Lizzie was maybe the maid, maybe she helped Miss Willie out. But I remember Miss Lizzie and her chess pies. And I didn't think about chess pies until later. And I was looking at recipes maybe a couple of years ago and came across a recipe for chess pie. Didn't try to make it because I don't think I ever particularly liked chess pies, but I liked Miss Lizzie. So yes, my grandmother was a washerwoman, and my aunt was listed as a servant girl, and my aunt didn't hang around long. Got married, moved away, eventually landed in California, and retired as supervisor of an accounting department at a naval base in a city outside the city she lived. I think my uncles were noted as farm laborers. They got away too. One became a well-known bishop and pastor of churches, not just in Louisiana, but there was a church not far from where I live that he would visit every year. As I said, my father was from Mississippi, Indianola, Mississippi, Sunflower County, Mississippi, which was an ironic name for Sunflower County, Mississippi, since it also had the tag of being the most violent county in Mississippi, not far, maybe 20 miles away from the small town where Emmett Till was kidnapped and murdered. So yeah, my father escaped by joining the military. But I said this was going to be about Juneteenth. What did I know about Juneteenth then? Nothing, except that every year we celebrated Juneteenth. It was looked forward to, Juneteenth. But I knew nothing about Juneteenth. I did not know that it was a celebration of the emancipation of slaves in Texas, who didn't get the word until 2 years after April 1865 when the Civil War ended. And of course, the masters, as they were called then, of the enslaved would not tell them any different. It was just Juneteenth, a time to celebrate, a time to have fun, a time to go and visit with your friends, life and laughter and fun and watermelon and red Kool Aid and barbecue and games. We played croquet. Can you believe that? I cannot remember how to play croquet now, but we played croquet. It's so funny. But Juneteenth was a time of celebration, and I moved to California. And when I moved to California, Juneteenth came around, and I asked my sister's friends, where's the Juneteenth celebrations? And they said, what's Juneteenth? Because it was a Texas celebration. I thought everyone celebrated Juneteenth. Oh, now a lot of states do, a lot of cities do. But then it was just a Texas thing, and I knew nothing about the history of Juneteenth. And now some people may say, and actually some of my sister's friends did laugh at me, you guys, you were so late to the game, you didn't know until 2 years later about Juneteenth. But what I do know now is that it was more than just a celebration of food and red Kool Aid and games. It was a celebration of courage and resilience and moving through adversity and strength and pouring into your children and letting them know that they were able, and when those doors opened, they would be there to walk through those doors. Education was key. You are our legacy and we believe in you. Oh, they were tough. They did not play. They did not play about work and work ethic and education. Yeah, Juneteenth was more than just food and fun, and frolicking and going to the beach, and connecting with your friends on a holiday, dancing to whatever music was out at the time. So in those moments, those Juneteenth I never knew you moments, we celebrate what we did not yet know was key to our history, to our ancestry, to our culture. And I hope on this Juneteenth, if you don't know, that you will check it out. Check out Juneteenth. See what's going on with Juneteenth. Life, laughter, love, celebration. Have you ever had a moment like that where it's like what Oprah calls that aha moment, that epiphany, where you suddenly realize that what you didn't know then, you know now, and how key it was to your growth, your forward moving, your progress? Because that which you know now helps you to celebrate what you didn't know then, but lived out. And we lived it out every day. Listen to the last stanza of Maya Angelou's "And Still I Rise" poem. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear. I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, those gifts. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. I hear Langston Hughes in the background. Life for me ain't been no crystal staff, but I still a climbing. Juneteenth, I want you to know, even in this season of life, I still a climbing. So as I now look back on those times, I realize that what I didn't know prepped me, or what I do know now, to take it all in, to absorb it all, what I am still learning and embracing and celebrating. Just a black girl raised in the Jim Crow South who embodies the hope and the dream of the slave. Maybe you've had a moment like that too, where life teaches you something in the middle of the ordinary. It was ordinary every year, Juneteenth celebration. But life has taught me in the middle of the ordinary to look for the extraordinary. And the extraordinary thing in those Juneteenth celebrations were those people who had been through so much, and yet they dared to celebrate. You know what? I'd love to hear your story. Feel free to reach out and to share your reflections. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story touched you, inspired you, or simply made you smile, would you consider subscribing and sharing this video with someone who needs a good story today? Next week, I'll be sharing a story, part fiction, part nonfiction, called The Three of Me, a moment that changed everything for me in an unexpected way. You don't want to miss it. Until then, I'm Donna Williams, and these are the stories I carry.